call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Welcome back, guys. I'm going to do my breakdown and predictions for all the fights at UFC 318, starting with the prelims all the way up to the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway. Going to give you guys a little insight into my thought process on my picks. If you're looking for a little bit more detail and info on why I'm picking them, check out my channel. I've got individual breakdowns for every fight, so check those out if you guys get time. And like and subscribe to the channel, guys. I've got 10,000 returning viewers and only 2,700 subs, so help a brother out. Like the video, subscribe. Really appreciate it. So let's get started here with Carli Judice versus Nicolle Caliari. I'm going to go with Carli Judice in this one. She is the less experienced fighter. Nicolle Caliari, 11 fights to Judice's 6. But Judice is going to be the longer fighter, so you can have the reach advantage, height advantage. I think she's just busier on the feet. A little bit more crispy striking, straight punches, fights behind the jab. Throws a really good 1-2, has really good kicks coming off of that knockout over Dubin in her last outing. And Nicolle Caliari, she's very aggressive. She throws with a lot of mustard, a lot of bad intentions behind her shots. And looks for takedowns as well, has good entries, can submit people off of her back, but I just think she's going to be a little bit behind on Judice in this one. I think that she was struggling against the reach advantage of Keita in her last fight. I think she got a really easy armbar against Laframboise on the Dana White's Contender Series, where you could see it coming from a mile away. And I just think Judice, she's young in her career, but she's shown really good abilities in the small amount of time that she's been fighting as a pro. And her only 2 losses are by split decision to Ernesta Carrascate and Gabriela Fernandez, which you can argue she won those fights. They're both very close fights. She's very tough. She's shown that she's she's very gritty, and obviously has finishing potential with the Dubin fight. So I think her reach, her volume, and her output, just the consistent output, she's going to be constantly in Caliari's face, keeping her at bay, not letting her push forward and get her takedowns or get any offense going. And it's going to be hard to beat the speed and 6-inch reach advantage of Carli Judice. So I'm going to go with Carli Judice to get the first fight on the prelims done by decision. Next up, Brunno Ferreira versus Jackson McVey. So Brunno Ferreira was supposed to be fighting Ikram Aliskerov. Aliskerov had to pull out, so now Jackson McVey is taking his 3rd fight on short notice. Was initially supposed to be fighting Cedricus Dumas a few weeks ago. He pulled out. Then he was taking on Chris Ewert. He's supposed to take on Chris Ewert, who was 10 pounds overweight, so they scrapped that fight. So unfortunate for Jackson McVey, but now he's stepping in again on short notice. Couldn't be against a worse opponent. Well, I guess it could be, because he's going to be much taller and lengthier than Brunno Ferreira, but Ferreira's he's a savage. Judo black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt, power on the feet, can finish you anywhere, tough as nails. He has been KO'd a few times, but it was by Ruzaboev, and that was what, two years ago? Yeah. And then got finished by Abus Magomedov by arm triangle choke, but he was putting it on Magomedov before that. So coming off of that armbar win over Armen Petrosian, took his back and got the armbar while on Petrosian's back towards the end of the 2nd round. Very impressive. But Jackson McVey, this dude's no slouch. I think he's a bright prospect. He's very big for the division. I think he's like 6'4". Yeah, 6'4", 77-inch reach, snappy punches, good trips in the clinch. Has slick submissions as well. He had a really slick Darce submission on the regional scene. So I think he's got a bright future, and I think he does have the ability to fight behind his jab and just kind of pick at Brunno Ferreira for 3 rounds and get the decision. He is going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. He's going to be 6 inches taller. Taller man. He works well in the clinch. That'll work well against a shorter opponent like Brunno Ferreira. But Brunno Ferreira's just got the experience, man. He's fought the much better competition. He's got almost 3 times the amount of fights that Jackson McVey has. He's got more fights in the UFC than Jackson McVey has as a pro. And he's got some really good wins. Gregory Rodriguez, Phil Hawes, Dustin Stoltzfus, Armen Petrosian. These guys are, very good fighters at middleweight. So I find it hard to believe he's going to lose to something like Jackson McVey, who is good, but just doesn't have the experience. Taking this on short notice. Brunno Ferreira did have the full camp training for Ikram Aliskerov. So hard to pick the newcomer making his debut on short notice in this one. So I'm going to go with Brunno Ferreira. I think he could get Jackson McVey out of there, but again, we don't know a lot about Jackson McVey. We don't know, is he going to rise to the occasion in this fight? Is Brunno Ferreira going to fall to the level of the competition? We just don't know a lot about him. So I could see Ferreira getting him out of there, but worst case, I think he's just going to be able to do more, mixing his striking, mixing his grappling, get a decision. But I do think Ferreira gets the win in this one. Moving on to Ryan Spann versus Łukasz Brzeski. I'm going to be honest, not very high on either of these guys. Ryan Spann, you know, he had some good wins, some good performances at 205 pounds, been very 50-50 though, and tried to make his UFC heavyweight debut. When was that? Back in March against Waldo Cortez Acosta. And he started out okay, landed some good right hands, but then it was just kind of all downhill from there. Ryan Spann just doesn't make very high IQ moves, you know, and, you know, what do you expect from a guy with a Superman tattoo on his chest? But, you know, spinning wheel kicks when he's exhausted, falling on his face, looking to do judo tosses against a guy who's 280 pounds, falling on his face, just didn't look good. And I know Acosta is, you know, he's decent at heavyweight. I don't think he's fought that great a competition as of yet. I think that he gets fraud checked sooner or later when he faces somebody who's actually pretty good at heavyweight. And Ryan Spann just didn't look the best against him, but Łukasz Brzeski is just not good. He's 1-5 in the UFC. His only win is against Walter Walker, which is just crazy to me, considering how Walter Walker's looked as of late. What's he got, like 3 heel hook wins in a row? But Brzeski's chinny. You know, he's been knocked out 3 times in his last 4 fights. Losing to Martin Boudet, Carl Williams. Like, the only wins that he has are on the regional scene. I just think Ryan Spann's going to be a little bit more athletic, a little bit more explosive, and I think he'll find a way to get this one done. I think he'll find Brzeski's chin and get him out of there. He's going to be bigger than Brzeski. Brzeski's like 6'4". I think Ryan Spann's going to have an inch height and an inch reach, and I think from a pure technical perspective, I think he's going to be better than Łukasz Brzeski. And I think on you know, Ryan Spann's worst day, I think he gets Brzeski out of there. So I'm going to go with Ryan Spann by KO in this one, but I would not be surprised to see the Ryan Spann of old show up and get fraud checked once again. Jimmy Crute takes on Marcin Prachnio. You know, Jimmy Crute, I'm going to go Jimmy Crute in this one. Marcin Prachnio's got a lot of experience though. He's fought a lot of really good guys. He's got some solid wins. And Jimmy Crute, you know, he was on a run there at the beginning of his career. Had some good finishes. Finished over Sam Alvey, Paul Craig. Got Peruvian necktie by Nisha Serkinov, but finished Olechechek, Bukauskas. Like, these are good guys. But then gets TKO by Anthony Smith. Gets knocked out by Jamal Hill. Took tons of damage in the Alonzo Minifield fights. And then recently fought Adolfo Bellato, the Golden Globe winner, Adolfo Bellato himself, and, you know, had a good showing of himself in the first round. Was able to reverse a takedown, do a lot of ground and pound damage, dropped him, hurt him at the end of that round. And I think it was a 10-8 round, but then he proceeded to lose the next 2 rounds against Bellato to go to a draw. So low confidence pick on Jimmy Crute, but, you know, he is a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's got really good wrestling. He's got power in the feet. He's got good leg kicks, but he's also susceptible to leg kicks. And Marcin Prachnio, he comes from a Kyokushin karate background. He is a black belt, so heavy on the kicks. He's got decent strikes. Coming off of a loss to Modestas Bukauskas, where he caught, like, these guys were like nose to nose, and somehow Prachnio caught him with a head kick in that fight. Almost got him out of there, but ended up getting choked out. So he is dangerous. I just think Jimmy Crute's going to be, you know, his name's the Brute. I think he's just going to brute through him. I think he's going to be, you know, getting a lot of respect on the feet, beating up his legs, shooting for takedowns. And Marcin Prachnio, he's lost by submission several times now. Arm triangle choke to Bukauskas, arm triangle choke to Vitor Petrino. He can be KO'd. He was KO'd 3 times in a row back in the 2018 to 2020 time frame. Lost to Rakic on the regional scene by TKO. So he can be chinned. He can be finished on the ground. I think he's like a jiu-jitsu blue belt, which is just crazy that you're 25 fights into your pro career, you're 37 years old, and you're a jiu-jitsu blue belt. But I'm going to go Jimmy Crute. I think if you can't get the finish on the ground with a TKO, drop him, maybe get the KO or get the sub, I think he gets the finish. But I think that he gets the win in this one. I think he's a pretty decent favorite. Minus 250, I would agree with that. So going to go Jimmy Crute to get that one done, get back in the win column. Adam Fugitt versus Islam Dulatov. You know, this one, I forget what the odds were in this one, but if I were to sprinkle any money on an underdog, it'd be Adam Fugitt, just because I think he's very underrated. He's a very good Muay Thai fighter, comes from like a high school wrestling, community college wrestling background. Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. The dude's just gritty. He's tough. He's got a good chin. You know, it shows his record. He has been KO'd, but he's been rocked a lot. And just, not even rocked, he's been hit very, very solidly and kind of just ate it. His TKO losses to Michael Morales, he never really went out cold. He got rocked by Mike a lot, but never went out cold, got choked out. And I saw him eat just like a flush head kick from Kinoshita and just ate it for breakfast and got the takedown. So he's very tough. You know, he's going to be just as rangy as Islam Dulatov, who's going to be huge for the division. He's 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. And Fugitt is 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. So he's going to be 2 inches shorter, but I have a 2-inch reach advantage. I think he's going to be the slower guy. I think he's going to lack in the power department, and I think Islam Dulatov's just going to get out ahead of him. You know, he comes out very aggressive, like a bat out of hell, and really gets after his opponent with a lot of power, a lot of diversity in his strikes, and a lot of speed. So I think that he can finish him. I think he can get out there quick, first round, second round, get the finish, get the KO. All of his finishes, or all of his wins, I believe, are by finish, and he hasn't been out of the second round. So if Fugitt can kind of weather the storm, I think he stands a chance to you know, win this as a massive underdog. Dulatov's a minus 625 favorite over him. So if Fugitt's doing well in the first round, if Dulatov looks like he's starting to gas, or even if Fugitt wins the first round, like, I think that's a really good underdog opportunity for all you guys out there on DraftKings. So, but I'm gonna go with Islam Dulatov. Just too much finishing potential on the feet. He's also got you know, a few subs. You know, rear naked chokes, Darce chokes, arm triangle chokes. So very versatile as well. But tons of finishing potential. So I'm gonna go with Islam Dulatov, getting the win in his UFC debut. Moving on. Ateba Gautier versus Robert Valentin. So Ateba Gautier is huge for the middleweight division. Just he's like the middleweight Ngannou, in my opinion. Just yoked up, powerful sambo guy. So, you know, very well rounded. Has decent takedown defense, tons of power on the feet. Was able to get Jose Medina out of there, crack that granite chin of Jose Medina, and knock him out in his last outing. And then coming off of a KO back in September on Dana White's Contender Series. So all of his, almost all of his wins are by finish, other than his pro debut, and then lost a split decision after that. But since then, he's on a 6-fight winning streak, all by finish. And dude's just scary. He's got devastating power. I think he's going to be able to keep it on the feet against Robert Valentin, who can be hurt and can be finished. We've seen that in his past few fights. Got finished by Ryan Loder, got laid on by Torres Finney in what could be the worst fight I've ever seen in my entire life. Had some good performances on The Ultimate Fighter, but those guys weren't that great. And I'm going to say this, and I spoke to this in my individual video for this fight, is he fought, what's his name, Pietro Panini. And he went in for a single leg, got kind of stuffed against the cage, and Panini started hitting him with elbows to the side of the head, landed 2 elbows to the back of his head. And Robert Valentin, I felt like he was looking for a way out, which is just crazy. It goes back to the Bellato fight. Like, he was doing so well to just make a fool of himself and look for a way out. And I feel like that's what he did against Panini. He was rarely like putting on a drama performance. You know, it's like, I can understand if you took some shots and you just can't continue, or like you're concussed. That makes sense. But when these guys just like act it up and they're like, oh, I don't know where I'm at, and they're just like stumbling around, it's like, dude, like, guys get face planted, KO'd in the cage, and they don't act that way. And so I just feel like I question his tenacity, I question his resolve. You couple that with his fight against Ryan Loder, where he just had nothing to give against Ryan Loder on the ground, just couldn't find his way out of it. I feel like he just kind of gives up, and so I do think he has an opportunity to get this to the ground and look for submissions. He's got decent straight punches on the feet. I just think that he's going to be giving Gautier too much respect on the feet, because if you don't, it's lights out. And Gautier is going to have, he's obviously going to be the bigger guy. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage as well. Tons of momentum. He's only 23 years old, so every time we see him, he's just going to be making market improvements. Robert Valentin, I'm not saying that he doesn't have a chance, but his chance is to get this to the ground, or maybe land like a step-in elbow as Gautier, looks to step in. But I think Gautier gets this one done. I think he's gonna get the KO over Robert Valentin. Moving on, Francisco Prado versus Nikolay Veretennikov. Now this one, like, Francisco Prado is so talented, but he's moving up. I guess the UFC PI was like, hey man, you need to move up We did some testing, and just we recommend that you move up just due to weight cutting issues, which is crazy because he's like 5'10". He's not the biggest guy in the world, and he's always the smaller guy at 155 pounds, and he's definitely going to be the smaller guy in this fight and then a lot of his other fights. He just lost to Jake Matthews in his welterweight debut. You know, it was a good fight, but you could tell that Jake Matthews was able to just kind of big brother him a little bit, and I'm concerned about that in this fight against Nikolay Veretennikov. But, you know, Francisco Prado, he's very good. He's tough. He's got really fast hands, a lot of power, kind of like Mike Tyson-esque. Got a great chin. Dude's really scrappy. I'd pick him. I wouldn't be against picking him against a lot of, you know, lightweights. And, you know, his losses, Jamie Mullarkey, Daniel Zellhuber, Jake Matthews, he took the Mullarkey and the Zellhuber fight on short notice, lost by decision, lost to Jake Matthews in his welterweight debut. Jake Matthews has been fighting in the UFC for a decade now. And so he's only losing to really good guys and losing by decision. He's hard to finish. And he's all around just very good. And Nikolay Veretennikov, I thought that he was, you know, at least somewhat decent, but he's, you know, he's 12-6. Coming off of 2 losses, and did not look good in his fight with Austin Vanderford. Couldn't defend a takedown, has no idea what to do when he's on the ground. When his back's on the ground, he is a fish out of water. He is a victim when you get this guy on the ground. But will Francisco Prado be able to get on the ground? I think he can. I think he can mix in his striking, get some takedowns, or at least make him think about that as he comes up top and lands strikes. Veretennikov, he has a hard time getting going and putting volume out there. And we saw that against the Danny Barlow fight where he lost by split decision, and which I thought was impressive. But then Danny Barlow goes and gets KO'd by what's his name? The British guy. What's his name? Sam Patterson. You know, so it's like, how good of a win is that? Nikolay Veretennikov, 35 years old. Big for the division. He fought Michael Morales in the Dana White's Contender Series, and he was like towering over Michael Morales, who's huge for welterweight. But I just think he's too hesitant. I think he's kind of clunky on the feet, and I don't trust him. He hasn't shown me anything that makes me go, wow, this dude can win a fight against somebody as good as Francisco Prado. Francisco Prado, he's just got good kicks. He's very sound everywhere. He's got good jiu-jitsu, 6 submission wins, has some KOs. He can go the distance, obviously, with really good guys. I just think he outworks Nikolay Veretennikov, lands more damage, maybe mixing his takedowns and exposes the glaring gap in Veretenikov's game. But I do think Francisco Prado gets this one done. Moving on, Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Marvin Vettori, man. Marvin Vettori is, I feel like he's, I don't know, I don't want to say a fluke, but I feel like he's just very tough. You can't crack that skull, dude. Marvin Vettori, the best chin in MMA, and I won't be convinced otherwise. Coming in off of a loss over Roman Dolidze, I picked against him in that fight. I thought Dolidze would be a little bit busier, landing with a little bit more significance, has the takedown threats, and lost that decision. He got beat up bad by Jerry Cannonier before that. Barely won against Roman Dolidze before that. Lost to Whitaker. You know, hasn't had a good win. Hasn't had any wins in 2 years. He took a little bit of a break, a 1.5 break after his loss to Jerry Cannonier, which is probably good. He wants to maintain that stone-like chin that he has. But, you know, has some wins over Hermanson, Kevin Holland. Lost to Israel Adesanya twice. I just don't think there's anything that Marvin Vettori does great. You know, he's tough. He's got good chin. He's got good fundamentals on the feet, good boxing, good leg kicks, solid takedown defense. But it's just like, I just don't think there's anything that really gets him over the edge and gets him into the upper echelon as to guys that we should be worried about, or you know, that we think is going to be somebody in his career. And granted, he is still relatively young. He's 31, still in his prime. But there's just nothing that Marvin Vettori does that I'm just like, man, this guy is a future. I mean, he already was a contender. Like, this guy's going to be, you know, fighting for a title anytime soon. And Brendan Allen, you know, he's really young too, 29 years old, but he's been in the UFC for so long. He's been in the UFC since 2019, so 6 years, has tons of fights, fought a lot of really good guys, has a lot of really good wins, only losing to the best guys, Imavov, Hernandez. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, but I think he gets this one done. I just think Brendan Allen, you know, he's good on the feet, dangerous on the feet, has solid technique, really good grappling, really good takedowns. His cardio does suffer, and that's why I picked against him in his last fight against Anthony Hernandez. But you know, he's a polished striker, very well rounded, good striking, good kicks, good timing on his takedowns. And I just think he's more well rounded. I think he has more finishing potential, and I think that he's going to be better than Vettori in certain areas of the game in terms of, mixing it up well, jiu-jitsu. He's got a few more tools on the feet, and I think he's just a little bit better everywhere. So I'm gonna go with Brendan Allen to get this one done. I don't think he gets Marvin Vettori out of there. Vettori's hard to finish. I don't think he's ever been finished. All of his losses are by decision. He's got decent wrestling defense, decent jiu-jitsu defense, and an egg of a head that refuses to be cracked. So I'm gonna go with Brendan Allen to get this one done by decision. Kyler Phillips takes on Vinicius Oliveira. So Kyler Phillips, there's a lot of hype behind this dude before he ran into the legendary Rob Font in his last fight back in October. Lost to Raulian Paiva, but had some good performances. Pedro Munoz, Raoni Barcelos, Marcelo Rojo. His nickname's the Matrix, and if you watch the Munoz fight, he was just in kind of a flow state on the feet. Just looked very fluid, very good on the feet. Really good kicks, really good combinations with his hands that he ends with kicks, and also really good wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I think that he was he was a California state judo champion and also a wrestling state champion. Started out in an MMA gym when he was like 3 years old. He's a Gracie brown belt and has really good takedowns, 51% takedown accuracy. Just really good punches, fast jab, great kicks, spinning kicks, just really good movement everywhere. And we saw in his fight with Rob Font, he was having success in the first round, but Rob Font was able to pressure him and get in his face and put a pace on him to where he wasn't able to get the space to get his offense going. And I just don't think Vinicius Oliveira is going to be able to put on that type of pace to be in Kyler Phillips' face and throw in tons of volume to get him off his game. Oliveira he's 22-3. I think he's very good. He is kind of chinny. He has been chinned a couple times, but he's huge for the weight class. He's explosive, has really good low kicks, really good forward pressure, decent takedown defense, 76%. Was having some good takedowns on Said Nurmagomedov and defending those well as well. But Said Nurmagomedov, despite the name, isn't the best wrestler. He's more of a kickboxer, more of a striker, but he was getting taken down by Bernardo Sopaj in their fight on short notice. I just think Kyler Phillips is going to be able to mix it up on the feet, use his footwork to outpoint Vinicius Oliveira, and work his takedown game. Oliveira's only a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, which again, crazy. You're 22-3, you're in the UFC, and you're only a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I just think Kyler Phillips is going to be a little too good on the feet with his movement, his evasiveness on the feet, and I just don't think Oliveira is going to really be able to threaten with takedowns or put a pressure or a pace on somebody like Kyler Phillips to really get him off his game. So I see him kind of dancing around, landing good strikes on the feet, mixing in his grappling, and getting this one done. Moving on. Michael Johnson takes on Daniel Zellhuber. Hot take. I'm going to go with Michael Johnson in this one. Daniel Zellhuber, he's young, he's a good prospect, but he hasn't done anything to really impress me. 15-2, but I don't think he's as good as the UFC and everybody wants me to believe that he is. He's 6'1" with a 77-inch reach, so he's going to be 3 inches taller and have a 3.5-inch reach advantage, but Michael Johnson is very fast, he moves very well, he's explosive. I think he'll be able to close that gap, cross the void, and land his strikes. Again, very powerful, has really good wrestling, tons of experience. I think he's got like 30 fights in the UFC. Has been chinned a few times, so that is a concern in any of his fights, but who is Daniel Zellhuber chinning? His finishes are by anaconda choke in the UFC. Other than that, it's all decisions. Has some regional knockouts. Knocked out a guy before he went to Dana White's Contender Series, but that guy was 0-0. This dude was like 8-0 fighting a guy who's 0-0. Like, what are you doing? Lost to Trey Ogden, who just put a lot of pressure on him, got in his face. Trey Ogden, he doesn't have as much power, not as fast as Michael Johnson. But he's a good wrestler. He mixes it up well, has a lot of experience, and that's how I see this fight going with Michael Johnson, who's going to be, smaller. I wouldn't say he's going to be less strong, but he is going to be smaller frame-wise and in terms of reach advantage. But we saw Esteban Ribovic, who is smaller than Michael Johnson, maybe the same size, but I don't think hits as hard as Michael Johnson, and he was able to win a split decision over Daniel Zellhuber and hurt him really bad in the third round. So I think Michael Johnson gets this one done. The odds are pretty -575 for Daniel Zellhuber. This could be a dumb pick. Like, why are you picking Michael Johnson, who's 39 years old, who can be knocked out and who's going to have a reach disadvantage? But he hasn't seen anything. He hasn't seen anything that Zellhuber does before. And Zellhuber's got good boxing, good stand-up, I think he's a jiu-jitsu black belt as well, but I don't think he's gonna be able to get Michael Johnson down to the ground. So I just think Johnson's he's the crafty vet, and I feel like these are the dogs that you pick. You know, the same way that I should have picked Derek Johnson last week. Like, these are the dogs that you pick who have tons of finishing potential, tons of experience, and nothing to lose. You know, nothing to lose in this one. He's on a 2-fight winning streak over had a nasty knockout over Otman Azaitar. So he's got a little bit of momentum going into this one, whereas Daniel Zellhuber, coming off of a split decision loss to Esteban Ribovic. So I'm going to go with Michael Johnson this one. I think that he can chin Daniel Zellhuber and get him out of there, if not win a decision. Call me crazy. Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. I'm going to go with Dan Ige. Dan Ige, he's been the smaller guy the majority of his career and had a lot of success. This is like one of the fights where he's going to be the bigger guy, taking on Patricio Pitbull, who's old, man. He's 38 years old, just turned 38. Dan Ige's got a lot of experience. He's 33. He's also a jiu-jitsu black belt. Some people say he hits harder than Ilia Topuria, which is insane. People say that he's got the hands of a middleweight. So this dude's got huge hands. He's got tons of skills, great boxing. I think he was a college wrestler as well. So tons of skills and tons of tools for Dan Ige, who's going to be a rough night out for anybody, especially something like Patricio Pitbull, who has been kind of hesitant as of late. He's very patient, almost too patient. Good calf kicks, good feints. Obviously has power. Obviously, can finish the fight anywhere. He's also a high-level black belt. Just he's too confident in his one-punch power. Doesn't let his hands go. He's a little too hesitant, waits a little bit too long, and I think you can't do that against Dan Ige. He's going to be getting out there early, looking to get out there and get points on the board immediately, and putting palms on him, putting paws on Pitbull. He's going to have a 5.5-inch reach advantage over him. He's going to be an inch taller. I think he's going to be, he's obviously younger. He's going to be stronger, more momentum, more experience in the UFC, fighting really good guys. Pitbull's fought really good guys over in Bellator, but there's levels, and the UFC is better than Bellator. And Ige has gone to a decision with Lerone Murphy, Diego Lopez. He dropped Lerone Murphy, almost got him out of there. Diego Lopez, Bryce Mitchell, Movsar Evloev, Josh Emmett, Chan Sung Jung, Calvin Kattar. Like, he's fighting the really good guys of the division. Very hard to finish. I don't know if he's ever been finished. All decisions. So if you can't get Dan Ige out of there, he's the bigger guy, he's the younger guy. I think he's going to be hurting Patricio Pitbull, whose chin is pretty suspect. He got dropped in his fight with Jeremy Kennedy before he made his UFC debut. He was KO'd in Ryzen before that, and he was knocked down badly by Yair Rodriguez in their last fight. So I think Father Time is catching up to Patricio Pitbull. I wish he would have made the jump to the UFC about 10 years ago, when he's 28, barely in his prime. I think he could have really made a run, but I don't see this one playing out for him very well. And he is a plus 150 underdog, so not crazy. Not a crazy underdog, but I don't see how he beats Dan Ige in this one. So moving on, Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. Kevin Holland has gotten back into my good graces since he started to take his career seriously. He went on a little bit of a skid there, Roman Dolidze fight, rib injury, I get it. But then Ranier Ritter just got bullied, got big brothered by him. And I was constantly just like, why are you fighting at 185 pounds? He needs to take it seriously. He needs to diet and get down to welterweight, because he's an absolute force at welterweight. And since dropping to welterweight, he beat Gunnar Nelson, hurt him in the first round, kept it on the feet, was just tagging him up the entire fight. And then beat Vicente Luque, got him with the Anaconda choke, and got the finish. So Kevin Holland he's a hard night out for anybody at 170 pounds, unless you're an absolute savage of a wrestler who can get him to the ground and hold him there. But at welterweight, I just feel like there's not really a lot of people that are going to be able to hold him down and control him on the ground the way that people are able to do that at 185 pounds. Like, he's big, he's 6'3", he's kind of like that table where he's just able to post and not get taken down. And he was taken down against Gunnar Nelson, but he was able to stay safe, threaten, and get back up to his feet and win that fight. And he's a bad night out for anybody on the feet. I think Kevin Holland, even with Jack Della Maddalena, had a really good fight with him, went to a split decision. He did lose to Michael Page and Stephen Thompson, but I just feel like anybody who's not the elite of the elite in terms of striking at 170 pounds, they're going to have a really hard night with Kevin Holland. And Daniel Rodriguez, that's what he does. He strikes. He doesn't really have a lot of grappling. And I think he's going to be he's going to be suffering the reach disadvantage this entire fight. He's going to have a 7-inch reach disadvantage against a guy like Kevin Holland, who I think is faster. I think hits harder. I think he has more tools, really good straight punches, kicks, knees, elbows. And if he looks to get it to the ground to escape the strikes coming his way, he's going to be even more trouble against Kevin Holland, who's very wiry. He's very long. He can lock in, darces, triangles, everything like that. And he's just deceptively strong. And at welterweight, he's going to be very big, 6'3". So I think Kevin Holland's just got more finishing potential. I think he's better on the feet. I think he's got the better chin, and I think he's better on the ground. I think his only Achilles heel is the wrestling. But, the wrestling is just because he's kind of wiry, maybe not the most yoked up dude, but then that helps him in terms of his striking and his submission ability. So you give and you take, but I think Kevin Holland is better than Daniel Rodriguez everywhere, and I think he can KO him, sub him, get the decision. But I do think Kevin Holland gets this one. I think he's got this one in the bag, to be honest. Daniel Rodriguez is like 38 years old, 39 years old. He's 38 years old. Kevin Holland been in the UFC since like 2018. And he's only 32 years old, so still in his prime. So I'm going to go with Kevin Holland to get this one done. What are the odds? Kevin Holland. And he's getting right back in there. He just fought in June. He just fought in March, hopped right back in there in June, and hopping right back in there 6 weeks later against Daniel Rodriguez. Minus 410 favorite. Yeah, so, and Daniel Rodriguez, he didn't fight that long ago either. He fought in May, got a win, knockout over Ponzinibbio, who's also 38 years old. So I think Kevin Holland gets this one done. Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov. So Paulo Costa fights once every year, if you haven't noticed. He joined the UFC in 2017. And he has 11 fights. I think he's had like 7 fights the last 7 years or something last time I looked. And Roman Kopylov, he's fought like 8 times in the last 2 or 3 years. He's just much busier. I think Roman Kopylov has more finishing potential on the feet. And I think he gets this one done. I think that he had a really good performance last time out against Chris Curtis, who's a very good striker. Got him out of there at the end of the fight. Probably shouldn't have been stopped. But Cesar Almeida fight was having good success on the feet. Was mixing his takedowns to get the win. Anthony Hernandez, no shame in losing in that fight. But Roman Kopylov, I think he's like a master of sport and hand-to-hand combat or something. But he's just very good on the feet. Very tough. Has really good striking combinations. Really good kicks. He will, like I said, he will mix in his takedowns at times, but just fights behind his jab, really well, sticking with his opponents at varying speed, varying power. Just very crispy. I do worry about his cardio at times, but really good takedown defense. I think he's got to worry about Paulo Costa's leg kicks in this one. He's got really good low leg kicks, and he's huge for the division. Also has a really good chin and good boxing. I just trust Roman Kopylov a little bit more. I think Kopylov's got a lot more momentum. I think he's going to be a little bit better than Paulo Costa on the feet, who is strong. He's big and powerful. It just doesn't seem like he has the most power on his strikes at times. I feel like Kopylov's got a little bit more sting, a little bit more snap to his punches. I think he's going to be pushing a pace on Costa, keeping him pushed back. We saw that against Strickland, how Strickland was able to kind of just keep pushing him back and really working on his gas tank. So I think Kopylov's just going to be a little bit busier, a little bit faster. He'll mix it up a little bit better, shoot takedowns. I just don't think if Costa, he wasn't getting any respect from Strickland, who's just kind of walking him down. And I think Kopylov's more of a power puncher, more of a tactician on the feet than Strickland. And I think he'll just be putting a lot of pressure, dictating the pace, and just getting more respect and landing damage. This is a big step up in competition for him, but I do think he is very good. So I think he could KO Paulo Costa, but more than likely I think he'll outpoint him for a decision. To the main event, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Not gonna lie, I wasn't thrilled by this announcement. I'm a big fan of both these guys. I've been watching Dustin Poirier since the WEC days. And when was that? That was back in 2010. And everybody knows Dustin Poirier. Absolute dog. Great boxing, great chin, great everywhere. If you get one knock against him, it might be his takedown defense or jumping guillotines all the time, but good jiu-jitsu. Just an absolute dog. Somebody you want in your corner. He's very good. Always puts on exciting fights. And looked really good in his last fight with Islam Makhachev. Granted, he lost in round 5, but had some good moments against Islam, who's one of the best in the world. Had a good showing against Benoit Saint Denis. Knocked him out. Got knocked out by Justin Gaethje. But, that's Justin Gaethje. So only losing to really good guys. and already has 2 wins over Max Holloway. He was Max Holloway's first fight back in the day. Got a triangle armbar win, and then beat him again for the vacant belt. Was hurting him in that fight, hurting him early, round 1, round 2. Holloway had some moments, but I just think Dustin Poirier is going to be, he's going to be a little bit too big, and I think he's got the blueprint to beat somebody like Max Holloway, who, you know, both of these guys fought at 145, but I feel like Dustin Poirier is more suited for 155 than Max Holloway is. In that last fight that they had, Holloway didn't have a lot of time to bulk up, and you could kind of tell he was kind of wearing the weight. Not the best, a little fluffy around the edges, but in this fight I think he's had a little bit more time, so I think he might have the size that he needs to compete. But I think Dustin's going to have the size and the power advantage. He's going to have the reach advantage. I think he's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. He's going to be 2 inches shorter, but, you know, still going to have the 4-inch reach advantage. And Max Holloway, it's like, where does he land after that brutal loss to Ilia Topuria? You know, and I get it. He was looking good in that fight for a little bit, having a lot of success against Topuria, but then he just got he got cracked and got his chin checked. And so where does his chin stand? You know, he's been in a lot of wars. He's taken a lot of damage. And I'm just concerned that his chin might be finally down for the count, for lack of a better term. And I just think Poirier, you know, you can't go into a fight against Dustin Poirier with your chin compromised. I get it. That fight was back in October, but still, I think Poirier is going to be touching him up on the feet. And I think if Poirier, he could, you know, use his grappling, use his wrestling as well, but I think he's going to want this to be a, you know, a fan-friendly fight on the feet. So I imagine he's not going to be really shooting takedowns. But I see this being a war, and I just think Dustin Poirier, I trust his chin. I trust him more in an all-out war against Max Holloway at this point in both of their careers. I think Poirier is going to be getting a little too much respect on the feet, not allowing Max to really get like his high-pressure forward style going. I think as soon as he tries to do that and get his volume going, Poirier is going to be cracking him to get him to back off. And I don't know. I just don't think if he does start to get that volume going, I think Poirier is gonna be able to kind of negate that and get him to back off. Maybe shoot some takedowns to kind of get the pressure released, so to speak. But I just got to go with Dustin Poirier in this one. He's already beat him 2 times. And he's going to be coming in off of, you know, his confidence isn't completely lost. He had a really good showing of himself against Islam, but that fight was over a year ago. But I think another concern that I had was, you know, with this being his final fight, is he going to be training his butt off in training camp? Or is he kind of just going to go into it, going through the motions, kind of like Stipe was, the way we saw Stipe in his last fight, showing up for a paycheck, knowing that there's not a lot of repercussions or you know, there's no title fight in his future because it's his last fight. But I don't see that being the person I don't see that being something that somebody like Dustin Poirier would do. Fighting in front of his hometown, his last outing, like, he's going to want to go out with a win. He's going to probably want to go out with a knockout more than likely. So I see him showing up in tip-top shape, coming in as good as he's ever been, and looking to put on a show and make an example out of Max Holloway. So I think he gets this one done. I think that he can chin Max Holloway because he had hurt him in the past, hurt him several times. He's shown that he's got knockout power, obviously. And, you know, his fight with Benoit Saint Denis, he still got it. And Max Holloway took that damage in the Topuria fight. So if he was getting hurt often in the fight before that 6 years ago, I don't imagine his chin is any better now. So I think Poirier can get the finish. I think he can get the KO. If not, I think he can get the decision to get the win and ride off into the sunset. So appreciate you guys watching. Again, like and subscribe. Check out my the individual videos for each of these fights. Give you a little bit more insight and background into why I'm making the picks. A little bit more notes, a little bit more detail. And appreciate you guys watching. Thanks.